The first thing I saw when I opened the front door was my sister, barefoot, trembling, wearing my wedding dress. It was wet, torn, and stained with something dark on the hem, like red paint that had soaked into the fabric and refused to come out. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't even invited. "Why are you here?" I stopped. She looked up, pale, wide open, wild. But she wasn't crying. "Not yet. Don't ask," she said in a dry, thin voice. "Please, just let me in." I should have closed the door. I should have backed away, called Jason, locked the whole house, and prayed that this had nothing to do with me. But I didn't. I stepped aside, and she walked in as if it were still her home. Her dress left wet marks on the floor, marks of some mixture I didn't want to identify. I felt nauseous when I smelled it, faint but metallic. Familiar, making me shudder. "I had to," she whispered, turning back to the stairs. It was the only way out. She didn't explain. She didn't look back. She just slowly climbed up, one hand touching the wall as if it might disappear if she let go. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Not since the wedding rehearsal. Not since she said what she shouldn't have said. Not since she looked me in the eyes, smiled sweetly, and shattered my last illusion about family. She didn't come to the wedding. She didn't send a message. She didn't apologize. And now, she was here. In the same dress I wore when I said I do to the man who I thought would change my life. But now it didn't matter. Because something had happened. Something real. Something bad. I stood frozen in the hallway for a minute, staring at the stairs as if they could tell me what to do. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't check it. A minute later, Jason's car pulled up to the building. My heart sank. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. He walked in the door, threw his keys in the bowl, and looked at me. "What happened?" I didn't answer. His gaze slid past me to the stairs, then back to me. "Is someone here?" I nodded. "Who?" My voice was barely audible. "My sister." He narrowed his eyes. "Sophie?" He hadn't seen her since the wedding reception. She had been wearing red then too, but for very different reasons. He took a step forward. "Why did she?" "Don't," I interrupted. "Please. Don't ask." He looked at me as if I had suddenly switched to another language. Then he asked quietly, "What's that red stuff? What is it?" "Shoo." "I don't know what it is." I cut him off sharply. But I knew. I just didn't want it to be true. The door upstairs creaked. Jason didn't move. I didn't breathe. "Should I call someone?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. Who do you call when your stepsister shows up at your door in your stolen wedding dress, wet and silent, refusing to explain? I shook my head. "Not yet. Not yet." Jason paced the kitchen like the floor might suddenly open up. His hand hovered near his phone, not touching it, but thinking about it. "She wouldn't have come here unless something was seriously wrong," he said finally. I nodded. Because that was the only thing that made sense. And yet, nothing about Sophie ever followed logic. She once faked bronchitis to avoid a family reunion and posted beach selfies the same weekend. She disappeared to Costa Rica for 4 months after Dad's funeral. No note, no calls. Just a photo of a mango on her story captioned, "Healing looks like this." But now she was here. And something was off the script. Way off. I crept upstairs. The guest room door was closed. Light leaked under the frame. I knocked once, then pushed. She was curled on the bed like a child, arms around her knees. My dress hung loose on her, soaked through, still clinging to her body in some places, stiff with whatever had dried there. She didn't look at me. "I brought water," I said. She didn't move. "Sophie, what happened?" Her eyes flicked to the glass in my hand. She took it, drank slowly. Her throat moved like she was swallowing stones. "I can't talk about it yet," she said. "But you have to believe me. I didn't want to come here." "Then why did you?" She paused. "Because you're the only person who'd understand." That stung. After everything she'd done, the silences, the betrayals, the way she disappeared when I needed her most, now I was the safe one? She glanced at me. "You still keep the box under the bed?" I blinked. "What box?" She gave me a look. A knowing one. The one from the lake house. The red tin. My heart skipped. I hadn't thought about that box in years. A rusted metal tin we'd buried under old board games one summer, filled with notes, secrets, the things we couldn't say out loud when we were 16 and everything was falling apart around us. I'd moved it when we sold the lake house. Brought it with me. Kept it under the guest bed. But I hadn't opened it in a decade. I need it, she said. It's in there. What you need to know. What do I need to know? She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. Back downstairs, Jason cornered me by the fridge. What is going on? He asked in a whisper. Is she in trouble? I think so. With who? I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair. There's blood on the dress, Evie. This isn't just some emotional meltdown. I know. He looked toward the stairs. You said she wasn't even invited to the wedding. So how did she get the dress? I didn't answer. Because that was the question I had been trying not to ask myself since the moment she showed up. The dress was in storage. Cleaned. Sealed. Locked. Only one person besides me had access to the storage unit. Jason's eyes met mine. He realized at the same moment I did. Your mom, he said slowly. And that was when everything shifted. I waited until the house was quiet. Jason had gone to bed, reluctantly, after I promised, twice, that I wouldn't do anything stupid. I didn't tell him I was already planning to. Upstairs, Sophie hadn't moved from the guest bed. Her back to the door. The dress still clinging to her like it was part of her skin. She didn't speak when I walked in, just curled tighter. I knelt beside the bed and reached underneath. The carpet scratched at my knuckles. And there it was. Still there. Still red. Still humming with memory. The tin box was heavier than I remembered. Rust clung to its hinges like dried blood. I hadn't opened it since we were teenagers. Since the summer when everything went wrong. Since the night we made that pact. Don't ever tell. Not unless we have to. I sat on the floor, cross-legged like I was 13 again, and clicked the lid open. Inside, folded notes, a broken bracelet, 2 old Polaroids, and a single house key wrapped in wax paper. The scent hit first: old paper, lake water, mildew, and something else. Memory. My fingers hovered over the top note. Sophie's handwriting, slanted and reckless. If you're reading this, it means we didn't make it. I exhaled slowly. My spine stiffened. She had always been the dramatic one. The chaotic one. But even then, even at 16, her chaos had an edge. Not flare fear. The hallway creaked. I looked up. Sophie was standing in the doorway, barefoot, pale, the hem of the dress now dry and crusted. Her eyes fixed on the box in my lap. You opened it, she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Tell me what's going on. She stepped forward slowly. You remember that summer? I stared at her. Of course I do. No. I mean really remember it. That was a trick question. No one in my family really remembers anything. We rewrite. We bury. We pretend. It was a long time ago, I said. Not for me, she replied. Not anymore. We sat in silence, both of us staring into the box like it might explain itself. She reached in and pulled out the Polaroids. Looked at them for a long time before flipping one around and holding it out to me. Do you remember who took this? I squinted. It was the doc. That summer. Me and Sophie, shoulders touching. What hair? Fake smiles. Shadows behind us indistinct. Someone else had been there. I never remembered who. I thought it was Dad, I said. No, she whispered. It wasn't. The way she said it, low, final, made the skin on my arms prickle. Then she added, and he's back. The room tilted. What do you mean back? She looked at me. Her eyes glassy. You'll know soon. He sent me a message. What kind of message? She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. She just lay back on the guest bed again, pulled a blanket over the wedding dress and said, Don't trust anything that looks familiar. And, just like that, she was gone again. Not physically. But wherever she went when things got too real. The next morning, Jason stood at the sink pouring coffee. You didn't sleep, he said. No. Is she still here? I nodded. And? She remembers something I forgot. He raised an eyebrow. That's vague even for you. She said, someone's back. Jason frowned. Who? I didn't reply. Because in that moment, I realized I didn't want to say the name out loud. Not yet. The phone rang at 3:12 a.m. Not my cell. The landline. We only kept it plugged in because Jason refused to let go of emergency protocols. It hadn't rung in weeks. Jason stirred beside me. Let it go. But I was already out of bed. Something about that sound, the brittle, mechanical urgency of it, made my skin tighten. I picked up. Hello. Nothing. Just a faint breath. Then a voice, low and cracking. She shouldn't be there. A click. Silence. I stood frozen for at least a minute. Then, slowly, I put the receiver down. Downstairs, the light in the hallway was on. Sophie stood at the window motionless, one hand against the glass. You heard it too, she said without turning around. What? The phone. I hesitated. Who is that? She turned. And for the first time since she arrived, she looked genuinely afraid. I don't know. But they knew I was here. The next morning, Jason told me he was taking the day off work. I'm not leaving you alone in this, he said. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Sophie barely touched the toast I made her. She looked pale, like something was draining her from the inside out. The dress was gone. Finally. Replaced by a sweatshirt of mine that hung off her like fog. Last night, I said softly. That call. What did it mean? She sipped her tea. Eyes unfocused. Then, I think someone's watching the house. Jason stiffened. I blinked. Why? I just know. How long? A while. That afternoon, Jason found it. He'd gone out to get the mail. Came back pale. There was a note in the box, he said. What kind of note? He handed it to me. Folded in half. No envelope. Just my name in shaky block letters. Inside, one sentence. You buried it, but it never stayed down. No signature. No context. I looked at Sophie. She didn't even flinch. We went back to the box. I didn't want to. But Sophie insisted. It's in the second Polaroid, she said. She was right. This one was darker. The same dock. Just her, this time, standing alone. But in the corner, barely visible, something else. A shape. A shadow. A figure, half cut from the frame. I remember this day, I whispered. It stormed right after. We lost power. Sophie nodded. And Mom was gone for hours. That part one didn't remember. Gone where? She wouldn't say. I looked closer at the photo. The figure, it looked familiar. Like a face I'd seen in a dream I tried to forget. Then I noticed what Sophie already had. The person, whoever they were, was holding something. A key. Jason didn't believe in signs. He believed in facts, timelines, fingerprints. But when we showed him the photo, he went quiet. Then he said, What lock does that key in the box open? The red tin. The key wrapped in wax paper. I hadn't touched it yet. I unwrapped it now. The metal cold, heavier than expected. Jason took it gently from my hand. Then looked at me. Was there ever a lockbox at the lake house? I tried to remember. Tried hard. Then I did. Yes. In the crawl space. Where no one was supposed to go. The road to the lake house hadn't changed. Still lined with whispering trees. Still carrying the scent of damp leaves and something older. The kind of smell that clings to memories you never meant to keep. Jason drove. Sophie sat in the back seat, staring out the window like she was counting ghosts. She hadn't spoken since we left. Neither had I. We didn't tell anyone where we were going. Didn't leave a note. Didn't lock the house. Some things, if they're watching, are meant to follow. The lake house was smaller than I remembered. Weeds crept up the porch. The paint peeled like sunburned skin. The for sale sign we'd planted a year ago still leaned crooked at the edge of the gravel. Jason got out first. Opened the trunk. Sophie waited. I walked to the front door, hesitating before unlocking it. It felt wrong. Like opening a room you'd sealed with purpose. Inside, the air was still. Thick. Like the house had been holding its breath since we left. No furniture. Just outlines in the dust. No pictures. Just nails where they'd once hung. But the sound was the same. Creaks. Floorboard moans. Silences that whispered back. We made our way to the crawl space. Jason held the flashlight. Sophie carried the tin box like it was holy. I knelt and pulled up the panel behind the laundry closet. There it was. The old metal chest, covered in cobwebs, rust blooming along the seams. A lock I hadn't seen in years until now in my hand. I held up the key. Jason's voice was low, firm. Do not open that alone. I nodded. Sophie crouched beside me. You're shaking. I know. The key clicked in place. The lid creaked. Inside, a bundle wrapped in faded yellow cloth. I peeled it back. A notebook, thin, leather-bound, tied with a black ribbon, and a flash drive. Jason reached for it. I stopped him. Let me. I untied the ribbon. The notebook fell open to a page marked with a pressed flower, withered, blackened at the edges. The writing was mine, but I didn't remember writing it. If you find this and she's still here, leave. If she's not, read everything. And don't trust her. The blood in my body turned to ice. Jason leaned over my shoulder. Who wrote that? He whispered. I stared at the ink. I did. Sophie stood slowly. I didn't know you found it. I looked up. Found what? Her eyes glistened. The notebook. You said there was only the box. I lied. Jason plugged the flash drive into his laptop at the kitchen counter. It took a moment to load. Then a folder appeared. No title. No date. Just a single video file. He opened it. The image was grainy. Night vision. A room I didn't recognize. But in the center, my sister, tied to a chair, staring directly at the camera, and smiling. The video played in absolute silence. No audio. No explanation. Just Sophie in a dimly lit room, staring at the camera, unblinking. Her arms were bound with cloth, not rope. Like someone wanted to suggest captivity more than enforce it. Jason leaned closer. Why is she smiling? I couldn't speak. Because it wasn't just a smile. It was knowing. Like she'd already seen this moment. Already watched us watching her. In the corner of the video, a shadow moved tall, slow. Not approaching, just present. Then the screen went black. Jason clicked. End of file. Sophie said nothing. I turned to her. You kept this from me? She exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. I didn't keep it. I deleted it. Twice. And yet, here it is. She looked down at her hands. It wasn't supposed to survive. Outside, the trees rustled without wind. Inside, the crawl space still gaped open, like something was waiting to be put back. Jason closed the laptop slowly. I want to ask, but I already know the answer. Sophie didn't meet his eyes. It wasn't staged. If that's what you're thinking. No, Jason said. It was worse. He was right. That wasn't fear in her eyes. It was memory. Later that evening, I sat on the dock. The same spot from the Polaroid. The boards creaked beneath me, soaked in old summers and long silences. Sophie joined me without asking. She didn't sit. Just stood behind me, arms crossed. You were the one who buried the notebook, I said. She nodded. You knew someone would find it. I hoped you wouldn't. A pause. Why no? I asked. Why bring this all back? Her voice cracked. Because something changed. Something opened. I turned to look at her. And, for the first time, I saw it. Not exhaustion. Not trauma. Guilt. Heavy. Long-standing. Guilt that had its own name. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jason lay beside me, breathing slow and deep. But I was awake, heart racing. I got up quietly, crept downstairs, and opened the notebook again. Most of it was familiar old entries, cryptic notes we'd passed as teens. But then I found a page I didn't recognize. Different ink. Different handwriting. Not Sophie's. Not mine. Just 5 words. I never really left, Evie. I slammed the notebook shut. My breath caught. I wasn't alone in the living room. From the reflection in the darkened window, I saw her. Sophie. Standing in the hallway. Watching me. But not moving. Not speaking. Just waiting. She didn't blink. Just stood there in the hallway like she had always been there. Like she never left. Sophie? I whispered. She didn't answer. Didn't move. I rose slowly, the notebook still pressed to my chest. She tilted her head, just slightly. And then smiled. But it wasn't the same smile from the video. It was softer, sadder. As if she knew I had reached the edge of something I couldn't come back from. "You weren't supposed to remember," she said finally. I stared at her. "I didn't write that page," I said. "But someone did. Someone who knows my name." Her eyes didn't waver. "I told you," she whispered. "He's back." Jason was already up when I returned to the bedroom. He didn't ask where I'd gone. He just handed me a mug of tea and said, "We need to go home." "No," I said. "Not yet. There's nothing left here. There's one thing." He waited. "The attic." Sophie refused to go up. "I won't set foot in there again," she said, voice sharp. "That's where it started." "What did?" Jason asked. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. So we went without her. The attic was, as I remembered, dust-heavy, suffocating. Boxes marked with faded Sharpie. Childhood things no one claimed. A smell like mothballs and forgotten arguments. I scanned the room. One box stood apart. No label. No tape. Just a single sheet of paper on top. Jason picked it up. He read silently, then passed it to me. "Evie, if you're reading this, I lost." No name. But I didn't need one. The handwriting was the same as the page in the notebook. Jason opened the box. Inside, clothes, photos, burned edges of documents. And at the very bottom, another key. Larger. Older. Carved with 3 initials. D-R-S. Downstairs, Sophie was pacing. When she saw the key, she went still. Then, without looking at me, she said, "I think it's time you knew what really happened that summer." We sat at the kitchen table. The lake through the window. Wind scratching the glass. Sophie spoke slowly, her voice brittle. "It wasn't just the 2 of us that summer," she began. "It was 3. I frowned. "No, it was you and me. We stayed 2 weeks alone. Mom and Dad were—" "No," she cut in. "That's the version they gave you." I blinked. "What?" She looked up. "There was someone else here. A guest. Someone they brought in when you weren't supposed to know." My throat went dry. "Who?" Sophie hesitated. "Then. Daniel." My skin prickled. "Uncle Daniel's dead." "Not then." She told me everything. Not all at once. In pieces. Like glass in a paper bag. Mom and Dad had brought Daniel back that summer, after years of silence, after he'd vanished under family circumstances. They'd said it was to heal. To reconnect. But that wasn't why. They'd needed somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one would ask questions. And the lake house was perfect. Sophie found out by accident. She walked into the attic one morning to find him standing there. Smiling. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't tell you," she said, voice shaking, "because I didn't think you could handle it." "Handle what?" Her lips parted. But before she could speak, the front door creaked open. No knock. No voice. Just a breath of cold air. And footsteps on the wood. The footsteps were slow. Measured. Jason moved instinctively in front of me. Sophie didn't move at all. I reached for the notebook without thinking, holding it like a shield. The figure stepped into view. But it wasn't a stranger. It was my mother. Hair windblown, coat unzipped, face pale but determined. Her eyes landed on Sophie first. "I told you not to come here," she said coldly. Sophie stood. "And I told you if he ever resurfaced, I would." Mom's gaze shifted to me. "I suppose you know everything now." I shook my head. "I don't know anything. I don't know why you kept it from me. Why you buried it. Why you let me believe it was just some summer vacation." She sighed, dropped her purse to the floor, and sat down slowly. "There are things you protect your children from," she said softly. "And then there are things you bury so deep, you start believing they were never real." Jason paced behind us, tense, alert. "I need you to tell me the truth," I said. "All of it." Mom nodded once. And then she told me. Daniel had been released early. No one was notified. He showed up on their doorstep unannounced, asking to stay. They agreed, briefly, under the condition that I wouldn't be told. They knew how close we'd been when I was little. Knew what the return might stir up. But something shifted that summer. He grew unpredictable. Obsessive. Especially with Sophie. She never said anything outright. But one night, after a screaming match I never heard, he disappeared again. Mom said Sophie came down from the attic, barefoot, shaking, saying only one thing. He's gone now. They searched. But the lake was deep. And Daniel had a way of vanishing when he wanted to. They never found a body. Only his coat on the edge of the dock. No note. No struggle. Just silence. I was protecting you, Mom said again. Both of you. But her voice was hollow. Jason looked at Sophie. You pushed him. She didn't respond. But her silence screamed louder than any words. The wedding dress. The notebook. The message on the landline. It had all started unraveling the moment Sophie took something back that wasn't hers to wear. Not a dress. Not a memory. A role. She needed me to see it. Needed me to know who she was that summer, who I was, and what we both forgot. I stood and walked to the dock. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the water. Sophie joined me. I thought I buried it, she said. You didn't. She nodded. I had to wear it, she said. The dress. Why? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Because it was the only thing he ever feared. I turned to look at her. And in that instant, I remembered something. A flash. A moment. I was on the stairs that night. The night of the storm. The night he disappeared. And I saw Sophie in that dress, then pristine, then new, standing at the top of the attic stairs, shaking. Saying one word. Don't come up. I hadn't remembered until now. Until I saw her wear it again. Back inside, the house was silent. Mom was gone. Jason stood in the living room, holding the flash drive. There's more, he said. I nodded. But not tonight. We packed in silence. Left the lake house with the notebook, the photos, and the dress, now sealed in a black bag. Sophie didn't say goodbye. She just looked at me and said, if he ever comes back, you'll remember what to do. 3 weeks later, I received a box. No return address. Inside, a Polaroid. Of the lake. Of the dock. Of the water. And in the corner, a man. Smiling. Holding a key.